Hi model builders. Today we're going to discuss the 73 Mustang from MPC. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different with this build. I'm not going to be building it stock, and part of it is going to be explained here as we go through the unboxing part. Something new I haven't done before, but wanted to go over these parts with you, give you a look at them before we start on it. So here's all the parts, all the unchrome parts anyway. Start with the body. This is an MPC kit. Back when I built these when I was a kid, MPC was probably my least favorite brand. I didn't figure that they had the greatest detail on a lot of them. And this one's okay. Body itself isn't bad. It does have the side marker lights molded in, which I don't think the AMT version has. The interior tub filled with massive mold release sinkholes, both in the carpeting area and on the rear deck. Chassis pan. This uses metal axles in the rear and pins for the front wheels, which I always hated those when I was a kid. And this is the chassis detail. So you can tell the front suspension's minimal. Floor pan itself doesn't look too bad. Then we get a tree with this rear axle, which is kind of a joke almost because it only goes to the leaf springs. Some exhaust, some tires, kind of a nice hood scoop, although it's a little big. Wheel backs, transmission for the Cobra Jet engine, and a lot of flash on this firewall piece, as you can see. That's the front bumper and fascia. The box art lies, by the way. As you can see here, it says custom front spoiler. Well, I haven't found it if it's in the box. Here's the hood. You only get the double scoop hood, you don't get a plain version. This is a pan for the race version, covers up the rear seat. Race version center console. A very unrealistic looking radiator. Radiator support. And there's a bunch of engine parts, some roll cage parts. This is that's the rear body panel. There's the original OEM style dash, which is not terrible. More roll cage parts, rear window louvers, racing dashboard, Boss style rear spoiler, and the 351 Cleveland engine. I think it's a Cleveland. We have a chrome tree, which I didn't take out yet. It's got some ladder bars in there, some Panasport style racing wheels, these OEM style wheels, which I'm not even sure you could get in 73. Headlight, rear panel, a bunch of ridiculous chrome engine parts. I mean, come on. Chrome oil pan, chrome fan? What's that about? There's a double high rise. Got some injector stuff, and you can build this Ford. Now this is a 429 engine, I think. Can't remember. The tires, you only get one set. Got some Goodyear polyglass, nice raised white letter tires. But I'm not sure it's appropriate for the road race version. One metal axle. And front and back glass. There's no quarter windows. You do get red taillights. You can build this as a street machine, whatever that is. Grand Am Racer, which might be fairly reasonably accurate for a Grand Am car. And it says, or stock Mach 1. Well, you can't really build a stock Mach 1. First of all, the decals, which are terrible, are nothing, as they're shown here in the box art, nothing at all like a proper Mach 1. I don't think those wheels or wheel covers are correct for Mach 1. And there's a litany of other problems with this kit. If you really want to build a 73 Mach 1, there's a lot of wrong things about this one. So we're not going to build this one stock. We're going to build this one as a race car. And it's going to be done as a fantasy car, the 1973 SCCA Trans Am version. If Ford had kept racing in 1973 in the Trans Am series, this is what the car may have looked like. So we'll come back after some work's been done. Name this project Flash Gordon. This is all the detritus from the flash shavings that I had to take off of everything. You can see what a mess it made. These molds are not in the greatest of shape. A quick update. Here's where we are currently with this build. This is the interior and floor pan. Also the Cleveland engine. The fit on most of these items is not spectacular. This is all just mocked together right now, but trying to locate this rear pan is about impossible without having the cage involved. And then we have the body. 3 colors, carefully masked, and it actually came out pretty good. There's a little bleed through a couple places here you'll see, but that's probably easily correctable. And we had one minor incident here on the fender. I don't know why the paint pulled off of there, but it did. But that's where we are currently. And we'll check back again shortly when it's all together. A couple of notes about the build on this car. I decided to make a replica of a theoretical 1973 Trans Am Mustang. If Ford had continued racing in the Trans Am series, what might a 73 Mustang have looked like? Well, there actually is one that exists, and this is a picture of it. But there's a couple problems with this, trying to duplicate this particular car. One is the fender flares are pretty massive on this thing. The other thing is something's been done to the front end of this car to lower the nose. In a side profile shot of this car, which I'll bring up here, you're going to see that this car does not have a correct profile for the 71 through 73 Mustang. It's been lowered somehow in the front, because that line from the cowl down to the nose should be more straight. I'm pretty sure that's been extensively modified, probably for aerodynamics, but I could be wrong on that, and feel free to correct me. But I didn't like the looks of this car, so I didn't want to make a replica of this particular vehicle. One of the other obvious choices would be to use the AMT kit, and you could just make a replica of this actual road racing 73 Mustang. It was a Warren Tope car, which wasn't really that successful, interestingly enough. If you do some history on this car, it wasn't tremendously competitive. We kind of think AMT may have made a deal with this guy back in the day, and that's why his car got to be featured. But there's some issues with this kit. First of all, you can't build this AMT kit stock, from what I understand. There's not enough stock parts in it. It is designed to be, as you see on the box art, a race car. One nice thing about this kit is it does have a separate front spoiler, which the MPC kit lacks. And it is going to give you realistic decals and so on to make a replica racer. But a lot of people didn't care for this kit when I was asking about it. And for what I wanted to do, it seemed like the MPC kit was going to be a better kit. So what I chose to do instead was make a fantasy car, and I was going to base my 73 Trans Am Mustang on this 69. It's a Bud Moore car. It's a very famous car. It's been campaigned by some very famous people like Parnelli Jones. And the only problem with doing this was, well, there's a couple problems. One is it's a 3-tone color scheme, which is a real fun thing to do in a model kit. And the other is that the kit doesn't come with the correct decals to do a replica. So I needed to get these round number boards and number 15 or 16 for a Bud Moore car and do it up that way. So now I'll show you what I actually built. So here is the replica 1973 Bud Moore Trans Am Mustang. And I was able to find a seller on eBay that made the replica number decals for these cars. And let's talk about the decals real quick. So what I wound up with was a set of decals purchased off of eBay. These were $9 shipped to my door, and they have a good selection of the decals for a 69 replica, but there are problems. First of all, these are printed on a gold background. These black decals or the number decals, if you cut them out, they will not come separate from the gold backing. You have to carefully trim around the edges of all these decals to remove the gold, which is a real headache. And the other problem with that is that they're printed on decal stock, probably on a printer, and the little black outline of the numbers, as I was trimming it with the scissors, would flake off. So that was a problem. I wound up having to hand paint those back on so that they would look proper. And you'll see that on the car where, yeah, you'll see my handiwork. This is the decal sheet that comes with the kit. These numbers are ironically number 15, but of a totally different style and size and font that's not correct for Trans Am. This would be okay for a road race car or a NASCAR style car, rather. I chose to use the sponsor decals from this sheet because it didn't have the problems with trimming around the edges of them. I just selected a few that I thought would be period correct and put those on the car. And back to our kit. So I'll give you a quick spin around here of what this thing looks like. As a 71 to 73 Mustang body shell, the MPC body shell and hood are pretty nice. The hood actually is one of the best fitting hoods I've ever come across on any model kit. This thing fits like a glove and just looks the business. But there are problems. This kit was tooled in 1971 for a 71 annual Mustang kit, and then it was updated in 72 and 73. So it's 1970s vintage, and the detail or lack of it is going to be very noticeable because of it. Also, I've mentioned before that MPC is probably my least favorite of the big four model kit makers in the US. My personal favorite was always Monogram. I grew up with a lot of AMT kits, and Revell I have come to respect now, but back in the day I thought their stuff was really difficult to put together. So, but MPC was always in the bottom. I didn't feel like they had great detail, and some of that stuff was, some of the assembly and everything just wasn't the greatest. So let's start looking at the details of this thing, and I'll show you what you get when you purchase one of these. If you haven't watched any of my other kit reviews, I want to explain that I'm generally a out-of-the-box builder. I don't go into great detail. I don't add plug wires or anything like that. Whatever's in the box is usually what I use to build the kit, with some rare exceptions, and here is going to be one of them. This kit came with the choice of two engines. It is, I believe, a 351 Cleveland is the small block, and then there is a 429, I want to say, might be a Boss engine, that also comes with it. And you can put injector stacks or twin carburetors on it or all kinds of wonderful things like that, but that's not going to be suitable for Trans Am. So I decided to just put this small block together and pretend it was a 302, a Boss engine, and one change I did make was to the air cleaner. It does not come with anything other than a stock air cleaner or a hood scoop option. This is pretty much it. So this air cleaner is kind of, sort of, not really like what the Trans Am cars had. So I found this in a Dukes of Hazzard General Lee Dodge Charger kit. I had one or two of these laying around from I don't know when, and painted it silver and put it on here. The kit comes with a lot of chrome parts, and so I had to dechrome the alternator, the fan, the valve covers, I'm not sure what else. There was a lot. Just had them soaking in purple power, or the equivalent. Castrol makes a product like that too, and that took the chrome right off. It also only comes with one steering wheel, which is the original factory style steering wheel. Trying to get a shot of it there for you. And I was hoping to swap that out with a more race-oriented one, but I didn't have anything in the parts box, so that's what you get there. It has a racing seat, single, or the stock buckets. The racing seat does come with this safety harness you can glue on the top there, which looks okay. I probably would recommend a more scratch building oriented use of some belts that run back to the roll bar. But the seat placement is kind of odd. I put the seat where it wanted to fit on the floor pan, and it seems like it's awfully far front. I mean, it works with the steering wheel, but no race car in the world would ever have a roll bar and a seat that far apart. Having built a couple of race cars, I don't think that this would ever probably happen. You'd need a seat back brace or something in there of some type to keep that seat back from collapsing if it was in a wreck. So that's a little odd. I did use the racing dashboard instead of the factory dashboard, because the factory dashboard in a Trans Am car, and I'll show you this thing here, if you use this dashboard, which is actually okay for the factory one, but the factory one you would want to cut out the glove box area, you want to cut out the dash gauges and just put a flat panel in there for some gauges, delete the radio and the heater controls and all that, while still using the factory dash pad. That's what the Trans Am's cars did up until about 70, 71. But it looks like there may be room for interpretation into using just a racing homemade dashboard in the later cars. So that's what I went with. This was going to be too hard to butcher this thing up to try to make it work. As you can see, it got into primer, but that's as far as I got with it. The interior, we'll get to that. So the racing interior is basically a transmission tunnel, the dashboard, a NASCAR style roll cage, which I modified slightly to make it more Trans Am-y. And that's it. In a rear package tray, rear seat blockade thing that glues in here that you might have seen in the earlier shot of the interior without the body on it. Those are the racing parts. There are no door trim panels. You basically just have to paint the inside of the door panels whatever your interior color is, and the inside of the body shell is your door trim panel, which I think is a little lame. I wouldn't do it that way if I was making a kit today. This is the interior tub for the stock one. As I pointed out earlier, there's these massive sinkholes and everything. Now, the ones on the floor you probably wouldn't see once the car's together, but these ones in the rear package tray, I mean, they're going to stand out like a sore thumb. So they're pretty bad. And the dumbest thing about this is it's a 2-pedal interior tub, and the only transmissions that come in this kit are manuals. And the shifter, of course, is also made in there for a manual shift. So I don't know what they were thinking about. Again, MPC not my favorite. So we're going to turn her upside down and I'll show you the underside next. And here is the undercarriage. And there's not a whole lot going on here. The floor pan actually has some really nice detail molded into it. I got to give them credit for that. They got some of the body plates there, the oval plates that come out. There's rivets, there's good floor pan detail. But they stopped there, and I don't understand what the deal was. I guess this was just how they were done back in the day. The drive shaft and rear axle and springs are all one piece, and it's got a metal axle that goes through there. The gas tank is, of course, molded into the floor pan. But the front suspension is a real letdown. I mean, there's nothing going on here. I picked out lower control arms and the cross member and the strut rods in paint. But that's all there is. Molded in sway bar, and you're done. There's just nothing else there. It's very bland and kind of fugly and just very unimpressive. So when you're done with this kit, you're not going to want to look at the underside, really, I don't think. This is one that's just going to sit on the shelf. The factory exhaust is a nice dual system that goes out the back. With the race version, we don't want to use that, so they provide these side exit exhausts. And you'll notice that they are not a mirror image. The way they made the molds, the mold release pinholes are in the same location on both of them. So one side you can see them plain as day, and the other side they're going to be against the floor pan, which is what I think they should have done with both of them. I didn't realize that until I went to glue them on, so it was a little too late to fix them. But as I said, the undercarriage of this thing is so mediocre, not going to be showing this one off to anybody anyway. Let's talk about the wheelbase here for a minute. If you look at the wheel locations on this car, you'll see that the front looks like it's kind of close to the front. Actually isn't as bad in the shot as it is in reality. And in the back, you'll see it's also not centered. And that is as centered as I can get the floor pan in this body. So there's a little bit of a length problem there, and I don't see how you'd be able to correct that, honestly. One of the other things before we move away from the chassis completely is the front wheels are installed with MPC's wonderful plastic pins that go in through the back side of the wheel and then glue into little holes here in the chassis floor pan. It's about impossible to get those in and not have your wheels glued solid in place. And indeed, these are, despite my best efforts. The other problem you're going to have is when you glue those in, the front wheels are going to want to sag until the glue is dry. I set the front end up on some supports and let those wheels just kind of hang where they should be until the glue is fully dried a couple days later before I would dare set it on the ground like it is today. Now there is some firewall detail. You got a master cylinder, you got some wiring on there. Putting this firewall in, the fit of this thing is just atrocious, trying to get it to stay in place. I would recommend, if you're building the race version, that you still put the firewall in place with the interior tub sitting in there so you know the proper angle of it. Once it's in and it fits, it actually does fit to the body pretty good, but that's bad. And the other thing is this god-awful radiator support. This is the most hideous thing I've ever seen. That radiator is nowhere near the correct size. It's just a big bit of ugliness. And the backside's no better. I mean, it's just awful. Almost better off making your own and using a radiator out of something else, I think. The inner fender wells have no detail on them whatsoever, completely blank. And there is, of course, this massive gap in here between the radiator support and the front fascia of the car. What I'll probably do with this kit that I did not do so far is take a piece of flower card or something and make a cover to cover up that, because that's what the Trans Am cars had. They had an aluminum sheet that went over to bridge that gap and close things off and do better with the airflow going into the radiator. So that would be one way to solve that problem. It does not have a real front spoiler. You know, the box art alludes to the custom front spoiler. Well, that's a molded in bunch of nonsense down there that it's barely noticeable. Again, a Trans Am car would probably have an aluminum one that was made that would stick out at least to the bumper length to scoop the air up in there, and I may still add that at a later date. The front fascia fits pretty well. Was a surprise. The grille is a little on the archaic side. It protrudes a bit. The details are not spectacular. Since it was a race car, I left the headlights out. I thought that was the easiest way to deal with that. So I didn't want to paint over the chrome texture on the headlights. I thought that would look fake. So we just let those be blanking plates where the headlights would normally be. The wheels are the ones from the kit. They're a replica of a Panasport, the way they look. You get these nice Goodyear Polyglass tires, which are great street tires. Would not be caught dead on a race car, but those are the only tires they give you, so that's what you use. And the raised white letters kind of help it. If they were just black, I would say no way to go. And there you can see the abysmal touch-up work on my round decals for the doors. The two-tone came out, or the three-tone came out reasonably well. Again, I used automotive pinstriping tape to do the line divisions, and you can see right here, this is the kind of crisp line you can get with using that tape. It's a little more difficult down here along the sides. The passenger side didn't get quite as good as the driver's side did, but it came out pretty good. I mean, considering this is the first time I ever tried 3 paint colors on one kit, I was pretty pleased with it. So lastly, let's look at the back end, and we've got fit issues back here. You can see the rear valance doesn't really want to line up with the quarter panels. Maybe with some heavy reworking you could make it happen. The taillight panel on the driver's side wants to protrude. There is a mystery hole in the rear body trim piece right there to the left of the fuel cap. You can kind of see that hole there. I have no idea what that's for. It does not mention it in the directions whatsoever. You do get the red clear plastic taillights, but the taillight bezels are kind of thick and rather ungainly looking. And again, the valance doesn't fit too well on that side either. It does come with a rear wing. It's probably not mounted in a proper place for a Mach 1 Mustang, but this is a race car, so we put it where we figured we'd get the most downforce. Actually, I did that so that the rear decals would show up a little bit better. It does come with these rear window braces. Keep the rear window from popping out at speed. And the fire extinguisher is also part of the kit. The roll cage, as I mentioned, is a NASCAR style cage. I wound up cutting this out of the driver's side because this would not be accurate for a Trans Am car, so I just removed this and put another angular brace down in there to allow the door to be open and the driver to get in and out, which is how I thought these cars worked. But in watching videos here recently of Trans Am cars, I think the doors are actually welded shut, so that may not be necessary to do. But that is the kit. It is not great in detail. It is kind of a bastard to put together. I don't want to beat it up too bad because I'm always happy that Round 2 has gone to the trouble to reissue these things that have been out of production for many years. And I mean, if you're looking for a Mustang to make as a stock one, if they had provided you with correct Mach 1 decals, you could probably make a reasonably decent looking Mach 1 replica. If you're looking at this kit to make a replica of the Eleanor Mustang from Gone in 60 Seconds, the 1974 movie, bear in mind that the Mach 1 hood would have to go. There was somebody making resin replicas of a flat hood at one point, but I don't know if you can still get those. Eleanor was actually a 1972 Mustang that had been bodyworked and painted to look like a 73. She actually had a chrome front bumper that was painted body color, among other things. If you check out the turn signal locations and so forth on that car, you'll see it's not truly a 73. Could you do a Eleanor replica with this car? Yeah, with a different hood and some different wheels and tires? Yeah, it would probably pass and be good enough. So there you have it. I think we're long overdue for a better long Mustang kit from somebody. It'd be nice if they made like a real Mach 1 or maybe a Boss 351, but this is what we have to deal with. Other than this and the AMT kit, there were some Japanese branded ones that I have not been able to find or do any kind of reviews on. So this is kind of it if you're into these particular year Mustangs. And that's my build on it. I hope that was helpful. I give this kit out of 5 stars, probably 2. It's just not that great. It's not that inclusive. When it's done, it looks okay, but you're going to have to add and enhance a lot of it to make it decent. So that's my commentary on that. If you have enjoyed the review, please subscribe and look at my other Ford model kit reviews, and I'll hope to have more for you here in the future. Thanks for watching.